help us welcome Meredith Ellison, Senior Director of Wellbeing, Organizational Wellbeing.
Thank you.
You just got a title increase, I've heard.
I got a promotion.
You got a promotion, Senior Director of Organizational Wellbeing.
Over here we have Doug Zay,
Senior Chief
Operation Officer.
Are you the
for
Senior
Symmetry.
Chief?
That's right.
I like that.
Whatever strengthens the title for me.
Yes.
That's what we're doing around here.
I like how you're bringing them in
Man,
real
that's what we're
tight.
told.
These
We
are
follow-
legit.
We're
This
good
is
at
nice.
following
I
instructions.
know. I feel like
almost a little
I
intimidated
feel like we
here.
should be in a bluegrass band, and we have like one take to get it right because there's an old guy back there cutting it on a record. That's what these make me feel like.
Yeah.
Just sing into
Sing
the
it.
horn, Doug.
Hey guys, I
Like
see
one of those
everybody
little
on the
booths?
screen over there.
One of those
That's
little booths
fine.
they used to have. They still
Yeah,
have
that's
those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at
Absolutely.
that.
It's
Sing
one of my
into the
favorite
can.
stories about John
I don't know if you
Edwards.
can see me waving.
Uh-huh.
but I'm
Wrote
waving
3
to you.
songs, recorded them for his mom.
I love that.
recording
We
booth.
actually, I got the kids into one of those studios many moons ago to record some stuff on Mother's Day. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah, that's cool.
I
That's
hope you remember
great.
that. That was all for you.
It was the most thoughtful thing you've probably ever done for me.
It's a good one. It's a
Yeah.
great one.
Just kinda
Tell
give the old pat
tell
right
everybody
here.
what you did there.
Well,
it was
Meredith
solid.
has always really been into records, and so wanted to get her a new record player. And I thought, what better record than all 3 of our kids? And I'm kind of interviewing them and talking with them. This was 3 or 4 years ago. So we went into a little place in Asheville. It was like an RV
Yeah.
outside of a record place, and you go in and you talk into the mic, and it cuts you a record. And so
Such a
I
great
gave
idea.
Meredith a record player and a
was-
record
it
of her
was great.
children. There were
That's-
tears.
man, that's a good gift, Randy.
Nailed it.
You're good at giving gifts.
Well,
you're a great gift giver.
Not
He is a good
always,
gift giver.
but that time I nailed it.
He likes getting gifts and
Yeah.
he likes giving gifts.
I love getting gifts,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and I love giving
It
gifts.
takes someone that loves getting gifts to
It's a
give
love
give
language.
good
Yeah,
gifts.
absolutely.
Yep.
People say I'm hard to shop for, but I'm really not. Like, if you were to give me something
You'll
that had
love it.
meaning like
Brad will
this,
love it.
oh man, I love
Cheers,
it.
man.
you know?
That's yours. Take
Cheers.
it.
It means a lot. So we actually, there's a story here that kind of brings all of this together. Meredith and I were in Colorado for a year and moved here to Asheville, North Carolina, so that you could get your master's in counseling at Western Carolina University, right?
Correct.
Or is it University of Western Carolina? WCU, the Catamounts. That's where you met our good friend, Mr. Doug Zay, and this was 20 years ago now.
2000.
Close to it.
Almost.
Well,
19 years.
20 years next year.
2001.
Mm-hmm. That's exciting.
That's crazy.
Little did we know, almost 20 years later, I guess you've been here for a little longer, so almost 15 years later, that we would all be working together. And all of this kind of started when I specifically remember when we found out about positive psychology. It was through Sean Acor. He was being interviewed by Oprah for one of her
Super Soul Sundays.
Super Soul Sundays. And man, it had such an impact on both of us. And little did we know that you had already kind of gotten into positive psychology with your previous job there. So why don't we start off just by saying, what is positive psychology? How did that, kind of give us a little history, Doug, on when this kind of started being a thing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's certainly been a huge influence on my life personally, and yeah, I don't think without this piece we'd probably be sitting here talking about it today. So, psychology for 90 years. It was based on illness, and it came from the medical model. So people were really just studying what's wrong with people and how do we help them get better, which was wonderful and has produced a substantial amount of results in the last 90 years. And now psychology, can treat 30 different illnesses extremely effectively because of that study and research, and has relieved a lot of suffering. But I think what was discovered, and this is more like 20 years ago, was really saying, well, relieving suffering is not the same thing as producing well-being. And there was a gap, meaning if this is all somebody's known and they kind of move to neutral, then they're not left necessarily feeling fulfilled. And what really came next was the recognition, well, if you're intentional about practicing the things that support, in the word, and you'll hear us use well-being, although the word that is most commonly used is happiness. We could talk a little bit about why we try to use different words. But realistically, if you want to produce happiness, you can be intentional about it. And so for the last 20 years, they've been studying interventions that aren't designed just to relieve illness, but are designed to produce that sense of happiness and well-being and increase that in folks' lives.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, what I discovered personally in my own practice was, well, you actually can treat illness with those same things. And so we always kind of had the philosophy that, well, you got to uncover all this. You got to dig in. You got to know what's wrong. You got to lay on a couch and talk to somebody about what happened when you were 3 years old. And come to find out, maybe that's not as helpful as we once thought it was. For some folks, I think there's benefit in the understanding that can come from it, but understanding doesn't produce the results. Intentional practice, developing the habits that are supportive of it is kind of what most people miss out on, and where they have to come to that awareness and learn to be intentional about it and learn to create habits around it so they experience more of it.
Yep. So the overall idea, right, is what do happy or content people do to become happy or content, right? What was your background before you started working with us?
Well, yeah, so I started in grad school, but prior to that, I had my undergraduate in psychology and then spent a number of years working with developmental disabilities, and then shifted over and got my master's degree. So I was a individual and group therapist for 15 years, treating all sorts of the whole gamut of mental illness during that time, and then eventually kind of worked my way up in administration. But about halfway through that, I kind of hit a wall. Definitely hit a wall in terms of like, is this going to be my life, and just being kind of surrounded by illness and problems. And so there was a training, the title of it was Healing with Happiness, and I was like, well, that's got to be better than sitting around talking about depression. So I went, and little did I know that I was going for me, at that point in time, that's what I was really speaking to. But changed the course of my practice and noticed my ability to help people and impact their well-being just exploded after that. And then I took it and I started working with doctors, physicians, nurses, other counselors. I would go out into the community. I would annoy the crap out of anybody that would listen to me talk about positive psychology, but it's because it's exactly what I needed at that point in my life, and it's what gave me the motivation and impetus. And that's how we met. I kind of knocked on doors, said, "Can I just come there and do a workshop for the staff, or can I just try this out?" I was trying to kind of break out and do something on my own, and so then it turned into where we're at now.
Turned into a really good speech at a national convention in Raleigh.
Absolutely.
Before you were
before I was here.
Yeah.
Before I was here.
That's what I've always loved about Doug's story is, there was just a sense of just kind of courage to like put yourself out there. No one's coming to these workshops that you're essentially putting on in your other business, but you knew it was right and you kept doing it, and it led you to putting on workshops now with thousands of people in a whole different venue, but just kind of following that gut response that you had, that there's truth here, and I want to speak to that. And I just always thought that was such a cool story, how you don't know in those days of why you're doing something. Yeah. Like there's no results right then.
Sure.
Of why am I doing this? Like two people are showing up, but it's the right thing to do.
Right.
And I think that's so how you can take that even to our business.
Yep.
You don't even know why. Why am I talking to a room full of, of maybe nobody there? But I know this is the right thing, and I know that this is truth for me. Yeah. And you will then attract what needs to happen for you. I just think that's pretty
really
cool.
good.
Yeah.
Maybe speak to, if you can, a little bit about why. Like, we have a ton of listeners, thinking about, well, this is an insurance sales organization. What is positive psychology, or some of the focus you guys put on emotional intelligence? What does it have to do with what we do? Can you speak to that a little bit? Why it's important for us?
You want me to?
You go. I'm a good color. I'm a good color person.
and Meredith, you have a really good, you grew up in the business. You've done pretty much every job there is to do as an insurance agent. You've made the phone calls. You know what the appointment process looks like. You know what we as insurance agents do. So I think you adding color around kind of some of the the things that maybe lead us away from positive psychology in our daily lives and our daily jobs, I think is important. But it's certainly such an important component for our company that I think a lot of companies don't invest enough in positive psychology.
Well, I was going to ask. I'm going to answer your question with a question first. Like, well, I wouldn't be sitting here unless you had the notion that this would have been valuable to bring into the company. Like, what? Well, obviously you read the book, but like, what led you to say
I think
we want
it
to
starts
take this
with.
bigger?
So we were talking about Sean Acor. The book was The Happiness Advantage. It had a tremendous impact on us. It was kind of like an intro to positive psychology, if you will. And I think it goes back to what we have always wanted for our culture and for our salespeople individually. most sales cultures are very, we're going to drive you very hard. We're going to reinforce the things that we know now are not healthy, which is as soon as you get to this place that you've set out for yourself that is going to make you feel like you're successful or happy, your brain's already on to that next level, right? And so most sales cultures, they want you to just drive. They think that the sales are what's going to bring happiness. They think that, or really they don't even necessarily care what brings you happiness. They think the sales is what's going to bring them happiness and increase their bottom line. What we really want for our people, and we talked about this on the last episode, is time and money, and a combination of those things lead to well-being and a very healthy lifestyle. So really what we want for our people is contentment and happiness.
Sure.
And so when I saw this first interview, and then when we read the book together, it made me realize that, God, there's so many things here that I want all of our people to know. That all of these things that we have been taught our entire lives are outside of our control are not really outside of our control. We can be very intentional about doing certain things and creating habits that will actually increase our level of happiness and increase our level of positivity, which, as we know now, you increase your level of positivity or optimism, you're actually going to be a lot more successful in what you're doing day to day anyway. Sure. So that's what really kind of got me excited about it, was just knowing that all of these things are potential, are possible.
I think too, our goal was always time and money. But this work is, you can have all the time and all the money in the world, and if you don't know what to do with that for you, you're going to feel really lost and empty. Yep. So this work is about going inward and finding out, when I have the time and the money, what it is that I want to do with that and make it my purpose.
Right, purpose-driven, for sure.
And that is what we all knew, that this is what's going to make not really Symmetry successful, but how do we make you successful for you? And if we can do that individually 1,000 times, 10,000 times, then Symmetry is successful.
That's it.
Well, I imagine that probably is even part of your own personal journeys of, obviously you've been able to achieve success in the traditional sense with a company that's done extremely well, with being able to earn great incomes. I mean, all the things that have happened. But I mean, I think within that, you came from a place where it wasn't providing you that experience. And so my guess is, just knowing you, and well, probably more than a guess since I do know you, that's been a part of the journey. And I think it's meaningful to us when it's a part of our journey and when we really understand what it's like. And there's a term in positive psychology or in psychology called the hedonistic treadmill, which is you're always running towards that next goal, saying, okay, when I get there is when it's finally going to be enough. And so you get there, and it is enough for 2 weeks, maybe, something like that. And then your brain is, oh, well, it's just not enough money now. I thought this was the level I needed to get to, but clearly it's not, because I'm right back to where I was. Well, why? They didn't change anything fundamental about themselves in the process. They didn't practice or implement new habits. It was achievement-oriented, and we all get there. You get a raise, you get a new car, like you celebrate, it's enjoyable, but by definition that part of you just wears off. It's I mean, that's what addiction is built on, right? Trying
normal.
To sustain that feeling forever, that I'm going to feel like I do after I just had this huge win. It's like, that's not necessarily what positive psychology is all about. When you implement the habits and practices, I think those things take on a different experience when they do happen, as they're icing on the cake. They're not the cake, and so they carry a different level of meaning for you. But ultimately, they're a result of the practices that produce well-being, not the expectation that when I get those things, that's when well-being will be here. Meaning, a lot of people sacrifice family, time, exercise, good diet to achieve that monetary goal, and they're miserable because they sacrifice the fundamental aspects of what it takes to feel good.
So talk about that goal setting, because I think this is, certainly this time of year where everyone has more free time. We're together with their families. You're reflecting on the year. You're reflecting on what you want, different in the new year. So a lot of times you hear New Year's resolutions and all of these things. Can you talk about, how it relates to goal setting with positive psychology?
I think Meredith had some really good thoughts on that. Before we answer that one, I will say that one of the fundamental components or theories behind positive psychology really relates to like what makes up happiness. And this has held pretty constant in the research in the last 20 years. Really looking at, there's this pie chart we were talking about a little bit earlier, but that kind of references like what are the things that make up. And really about half of the way you experience well-being is related to your genetics, right? Just the way you're wired, the way you're built. And that is, all the way down to just differences in like how much you laugh at things or, just your disposition, things like that. They probably are going to remain pretty constant. About 10% is your environment, and that's the part most people target and attack with their lives and say, well, if I just have the house, or I live in the place, or I have the relationships, or whatever, then that's going to produce the happiness I want. The other 40% is the part most people ignore throughout their lives, which is habits. Is the behaviors, which are just what you've learned throughout your entire life. Most of the time, if you're unhappy and you really, really take a look at those behaviors, they are counter to the behaviors you need to have in order to feel better. And the cool part is that's what positive psychology has studied and really learned. And I think you made this point, which is you're actually studying the people that already know how to just do it naturally, that probably got won the genetic lottery and got that 50% lined up the way they needed it to be. And so you go study those people and say, well, what are they doing? They got the benefit of just doing it naturally. But what they also learned is that regardless if you were wired with it or not, you can influence that part 40%. And if you do, that 50% has less of a hold on your general sense of well-being over time. And then that 10% tends to boost you much differently.
Yeah.
So a big part of that is kind of where you got to of like, well, how do we set goals? Because most people are going to look at that and say, well, here's my income goal for 2021. Here's my, actually not discouraging people from setting income related goals. Those are great goals to set out, but they're not comprehensive enough. And I think Meredith, you were mentioning this earlier, just like what's the foundation for well set goals for people.
Yeah. I just, it reminded me of a personal story of about 5 years ago. I remember sitting in my bed, and it was, during the holidays and coming up on a new year, and thinking about goal setting and kind of what did I want for the next year. And I remember really using the work of really what are my values to set my goals. And I know for me personally, we had, really us together had a value of giving back, but when I really looked into my checkbook and looked into my calendar, my value wasn't being exercised as much as I felt that it was as strong as a value to me as I wanted it to be. And so I then set forth time and money that we were going to donate to each year of giving back into our community. And then when I remember looking back the year end of looking at that goal, it was like, wow, I really did it. And I honestly struggle with setting goals and following through. I mean, that's just that's not going to be a strong point of mine, but I will do it if I can put it through the lens of something I value. So I would just encourage everyone, as you're going into the end of this year, to really sit down and think about what your personal values are. I think it's easy to say what they should be, but it's okay to sit with yourself and be like, what is it that I truly value the most? And how do I want to put my time and my money, what we talked about earlier, into that value stream? So that is what I think would be a great exercise for everyone. And I kind of do it now at the end of every year as I kind of look back over and see, am I hitting that mark, or do I want to put more into it? We talk about values all the time. It's not something you reach 100% of the time. There's something we aspire to, and sometimes we hit them and sometimes we don't. But until we identify them, can we even judge whether I'm there or not?
Yeah, love
so
that.
That was
value-based goals versus just goal setting.
Just goal setting.
So good.
Because if you don't pay attention to it, what you'll find is you sacrifice your values in order to achieve the other goal. And if you live out of alignment with your values, the one thing I can guarantee is you'll be pretty miserable. Regardless if you're sitting on a pile of money or not.
I mean, that's what causes burnout, right? Is you have these goals that you've set for yourself, oftentimes, oftentimes financial goals or status goals, or you want to be somewhere. And exactly what you said, if you sacrifice your values because you haven't taken the time to actually sit and be clear with even yourself, what are those values? You end up sacrificing those to attain that. This wasn't what was going to make you happy in the first place. Now you've sacrificed your values or gone outside of those to get there. You're going to cause burnout pretty quickly.
And so we live in a world, I think it's okay that if you value financial stability and even financial abundance in your life, those are not, there's nothing wrong with those values. But a common exercise I would walk people through is if that is your goal and you value it, well, just spend a little bit of time answering the question, what's your life going to look like as a result of having that money, right? Because that's where people stop. Like, here it is, cool. It's like, well, no, what is that going to enable you to do? Is it travel? Is it spending more time with your family? And then if you look back over the year and you're pushing so hard to reach that financial goal that you're not traveling or spending any time with your family,
Right.
then you can easily say, oh, well, I probably didn't have a great sense of well-being because I knew. And even within that, you can say, well, at times, right, when you're trying something new, when you're striving for something, as part of you going to have to say, am I going to choose this, right? But then it's a conscious choice saying, you know what, at this time, I'm going to talk to Whitney. I'm going to say, hey, I really want to push for this. And for this next little bit, here's what it's going to look like because I'm pushing for it. Help remind me,
Yep.
keep me anchored
that's good.
into those values, right?
Yeah.
Don't let me lose sight of them, but understand that I might have to sacrifice that for a little bit. That's part of
good.
life. Sacrificing it for years on end, and only seeing it as a result of that financial success is, you're right, burnout
Yep.
is inevitable in that process.
So, one of the things that we always talk about with positive psychology is, and this goes into what you were just talking about with the pie chart. You got, the genetic piece, you got the reward piece, and then you have the changing of your habit piece. Let's talk specifically about that, because I want there to be some very clear takeaways for all the agents as we're talking about, even, being very intentional, introspective this time of year. What are some of the specific habits that someone can work on that research shows has a direct impact on their level of happiness or their level of optimism? The big ones that we always talk about would be journaling is a good one. You always say, I'm not a good journaler.
Yeah, but I do feel like I do really well with gratitude.
Right.
So some people need the journaling to find the gratitude, where for some reason it comes very easily for me.
So back up, what that means is, like, some people say journaling and they're thinking that they need to kind of write their
Write it down.
diaries and write it all
There's
down.
a lot. I mean, you can go on the internet and find as many.
Yeah.
And I did start that way. I started with a 5-minute journal, and I got into that habit of 5 things at the end of every day. But then I noticed, and I think it's a little bit through the work of mindfulness, of just paying attention in the moment of what is happening. And I do kind of look in my day to find what is it I'm going to be grateful for today. And you kind of, then your focus is on that. I'm searching for what am I going to be the most grateful for today. And it's a little bit of a hack, It's
That's
a
a
little
great
bit of a
hack.
brain hack.
That's
It's
a
hard
great-
to be depressed and grateful at the same exact time. It's really impossible.
Well, especially-
Actually, your brain can't do both at the
Yeah.
same time. It can't feel grateful and frustrated at the same
Yeah.
time. The brain has to choose. So, and I'm not saying I'm 100% here, but it's a tool I have in my back pocket. Another great tool I have in my back pocket that we all do is exercise. I mean, it's clear. Just this morning, I woke up and my energy was low, not feeling it all today. So I was like, I got to go get on the treadmill for 20 minutes. And and I usually want to do an hour. And
It was
I don't have
cold
an hour.
outside.
It
It
was
was rainy.
and I don't want to. And I think sometimes people think you are going to want to do it and then I'll go do it. And it's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it, and at the end, but
Well,
100% of the time.
Let's pause right there, because you're exactly
So
right.
good, yeah.
All of these tricks are like that. Anytime that we're talking
Yes,
about
yeah.
forming, creating, improving habits, and the big ones around positive psychology, as you're saying, journaling, gratitudes, exercising. You never want to do any of those things. Maybe eventually you really begin to look forward to them, and if not, you actually look forward to the way they make you feel.
Yeah.
You may exercise every day. You're on a very impressive streak, by the way. How many
Closing
days
some
in a row
rings.
have you closed your circles?
It's almost 300. I haven't checked
Almost
this week.
300.
I got to tell you, on the exercise component, y'all kill it with the rings.
I know, man. I'm
Like that.
I went to.
Well,
I
you
think it
gotta
was.
know it. Like, again, this helps me. I'm not an overly disciplined person. It's just not my strong point. but I'm a pretty competitive person, and
Yeah.
I want to see the ring closed at the end of the day.
You guys have some habit hacks that's a habit hack in a way.
Sure.
Like there's some other
Yeah.
kind of important things around creating habits that I think is useful for people too. I remember you telling me one time, like, you wanted to start flossing more, and you just put the floss in the shower. It's like, that's a brilliant idea.
Who wants to get
Go
out of the
floss is in
shower
the car.
quick?
I floss in the car.
I know.
The little
But
flosser.
you hit on
way.
something like that the other day about setting yourself up with these habits. I think it's really good.
Well, you got to make things, and then I'll let you kind of dig it. You got to make things easier that you want to become habits or attainable. You have a lot of those stories. Guitar is always the easiest one for us. Like if I want to get better
Leave it out.
at playing guitar, I got to be able to just reach for it and grab it. If I put it in my case and put it up,
Right.
I'm going to practice so much less. But what are some other hacks like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, to back it up, I think there's a foundational process that you described, right, that you don't need anymore. You don't need to sit down and journal every day to receive the benefit from gratitude. But a lot of people need to start. And being intentional about saying, you know what, I'm going to challenge myself to write 3 gratitudes a day for 30 days will help solidify the foundation of a habit so that you can build on it after the fact. But that would be like saying, I would really want to grow my biceps, and so I'm going to lift the same exact amount of weight every day for the same exact amount of time. It's like, well, yeah, that'll work for a little while until you get used to it, and then you're not going to build any more muscle mass. The brain is not a muscle, but it functions a whole lot like one, meaning whatever you point it to intentionally is where it will grow. So my encouragement to people is I'm not a daily journal writer anymore either, but I did it religiously in the beginning when I started because I needed a foundation. And so you can kind of take it and build on that to where a lot of these hacks become more effective, or they're just kind of part of the way you move through your day. So I think there's an encouragement there, but I think most people are like, do I have to do this every day for the rest of my life? It's like, well, hopefully not. Like you're probably not down the right path if you're still doing the same practice. And we need variety. We need variety in these practices. So like one of the most simple hacks with gratitude is share it out loud. Like journal writing is a very personal experience, right? Gratitude changes form and function when you share it with another human being. We have gratitudes on our monthly staff calls here, right? Where everybody's writing them down and sending them out. I challenge myself to write. I write mine down, but I don't let the gratitude reader share them. I share them personally on the call. Other things that you can do just to say, you know what, I'm having a tough day. I'm going to make it a point to find 3 people to send a text to today, to share that with. I still do those things. I did when I started. You know how I felt doing them? Awkward, uncomfortable. I would send it and I would just fret about it for the next 30 minutes, and until they started replying. And the messages you get back, and just understanding that these things are just kind of part of our fundamental human connection. So to your point, like, these opportunities are right in front of you. What gets you to do it? It's just a choice to step into something that's not familiar or comfortable for you. Now, 10 years later, well, I still get a little nervous in those texts, but I know the result of doing it. And so that's to your point. These things are going to move from discomfort to familiarity to value. And so now I value exercise. I don't like it. I would rather
Not
not
always.
do it.
Right.
But I do it every day. Because I know how I feel if I don't do it. And I know the impact of letting go of it. So it's almost like you got to get around to the other side of that. This stuff is, I mean, the cool thing about the system at Symmetry and what it takes to become really good is these moments are a part of every step of the journey. Like, I got to get my insurance license. Who loves taking online courses about insurance and taking tests? I mean, maybe there's a couple of people out there. Maybe you left it. I don't know. I've not met one. I've not met one, right? And then then you get to I've got to learn the products. Then you get to I've got to make dials. Then you get and each one of those, right? And then we actually do find some people who love the phones after a while. But it's really how are they able to do that? And a lot of people, to your point, they get around to the other side. Like, what do I get out of this experience? Do I get money? Yeah. But do I feel good helping people? Do I feel good about solving a problem for somebody? Do I feel good about getting somebody something? Gosh, just so much of the time within Synergy, the story I love to hear about people helping somebody who didn't think they could be helped, didn't think there was a product on this planet that could help them protect their families. So it's I think the biggest way to approach a hack is just understanding that the opportunities are literally surrounding you all day.
So how do you train your brain to find those things? And the way I would do it, and I still do it a lot now, is I try to infuse humor into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like this right here. If I want to find gratitude, you know how easy it is to find gratitude in this cup of coffee? Just think of what 100 years ago you would have had to have done for this cup of coffee. You would have had to smuggle in the beans or known someone to make the beans for you. You would have had to build a fire. Now you walk over and push a button,
But I will challenge you.
cup.
There is.
and
there
it
is
goes
still
much
someone-
deeper
There is
than
still
that.
someone
Well, that's what I'm
going to
saying.
get the beans.
Sure,
There-
yeah.
and so-
But it starts with the humor, and then I get to say, I am very grateful
Yes.
for Juan
Sure.
Valdez and for the people that are giving their lives in Colombia and
Yep.
sacrificing to grow coffee
Exactly.
beans.
Such a bad
Like there's all we were walking past your farm just yesterday, and you know what I see every time I walk up the trail? An outhouse.
Yeah,
Do you know how easy it is to find gratitude in seeing an outhouse?
that's right.
That's when you first really got the gratitude. I'll never forget it. You came
know.
out and you're like,
Outhouse.
no, he was like,
No, the humor of the
Just-
gratitude.
but
Like
your humor was you were like, do you know how grateful I am just to have toilet paper? You were like,
a
I
good
get
one.
it. It's the little
Especially
things
in the last,
that
How
make-
especially in
small-
2020. Especially in 2020.
yeah, especially in 2020. That's what was really threatened in 2020 is they were going to take away our toilet paper,
No,
right?
I do want to go back on something Doug said, and then I know we probably have to wrap it up. But you have to understand that you have to embrace the suck. Like, if it doesn't suck right now, then you're not growing. So when you're getting, so then the next phase, it's not going to feel comfortable because you're out of your comfort zone because you're growing. And then when that feels comfortable, you need to push yourself to outside the comfort zone. So it's almost like you're striving for the discomfort, even more the comfort.
Absolutely.
And if you can learn that, it kind of like takes it all away, and you're like, oh, I feel really discomfort right now. I must be growing, and it really does suck.
Right.
And
good.
and I want to be here.
Yeah.
I don't want to be comfortable.
And
for
if
the
you
rest
can
of
give
my life.
yourself grace to understand that
And
is the
grace.
exact opposite of the way we are all wired.
Exactly.
We are all wired to seek comfort, to
Yes.
relieve stress, to go back to homeostasis so that everything's copacetic. So to intentionally seek that is counterintuitive to most of us, but that's what the evidence and research shows. It's just like, well, but it's only through that process and on the other side of it, because what we're saddled with, unfortunately, is antiquated systems that were beneficial 10,000 years ago, but really don't have a functional place in a modern world. The very most simple is we're saddled with a fight or flight response that was designed to protect us and has done a good job. But rarely, if ever, do I actually require that response to activate, and it activates every single day of my life. You know, and if it's somebody cutting me off in traffic or something around the house with the kids, that response is there. And so, to your point of kind of emotion on some of this other work, it's like, well, it's all about learning and paying attention and understanding that the concept I love that I pull from out of when I used to do therapy is emotions love themselves, and emotions push you towards behaviors that recreate the same emotion. So if I'm sad, I want to withdraw. If I withdraw, I feel more sad. If I'm sad, I want to withdraw. Therefore, right? So you're just, right? So you think about it, it's like, if I practice gratitude and I'm more outwardly grateful, I'll have better relationships. I'll have more to feel grateful about. And it works the same way. The fundamental difference is negative emotions just last longer, right? You can have one bad thing happen in the morning, and by 3 o'clock you're still thinking about it. You might have had something really awesome happen in the morning, and it might not be as potent for you. So you've got to learn ways. Another hack I really love, and this comes from Rick Hansen out of his work, and it's in our Thrive toolkit as well, which is called Taken in the Good, which is, even if you don't share it, if you accomplish something, if you made your first dial, right, no matter what happened, you pause for a moment and just offer yourself gratitude for taking that step. And you were asking, we were talking earlier, like, how do people get over the hump? I will tell you, there's not a lot of magic to it. Like, there is a moment in which most people are paralyzed by just thinking about something. And I think it's Mel Robbins we were talking about, just kind of, as I can't remember her exact tool, but it's kind of like, count down from 3 and do the thing that,
Yeah.
and just pick up the phone, make the phone call. What we'll find is our anticipation of those things is so much worse
Exactly,
than
yeah.
the actual thing
Yeah.
ever was going to be. But that's not, and then stopping and saying, oh, it's not that bad. That's not what we do. We say, oh, that wasn't that bad, but this next one's probably going to be really
Yeah,
terrible.
yeah.
Like, I can
so
tell
good.
you a number of stories of all the horrible, terrible things that have never happened to me. And that's what you
It
build.
actually sounds like a really good children's book. All the terrible, horrible, no good things that never happened to me.
This, we just scratched the surface today on this subject. Obviously, we'd probably spend 10 hours talking about this together because it's something we're passionate about. It's obviously something that is important to our company. It's shaped our culture in large part to what you guys do and the influence you've had on this company. And it's part of our culture, but it's also part of our strategy. Like that's what I was saying earlier. I don't think enough companies, and I was reading an article the other day on Forbes. It was talking about emotional intelligence being the number one sought after skill 2020 and beyond, especially with technology and AI and this kind of ever-changing world. Like these skills that you guys are helping us in our culture to actually, keep people focused on the right things and giving them tools and how to with Thrive. I just think it's such an important part of our strategy as well, because it's the thing that I think really sets us apart. So
Yeah. And a lot of people ask, where do we start? And the answer to that is anywhere.
Yeah.
Just start.
Just start.
I mean that the Happiness Advantage
Yep.
was where I started too. Great, unbelievable kind of first read.
Yep.
Any other good first reads on any of this, whether it be positive psychology or emotional intelligence or
talking about
podcasts?
this. Well, I mean, these aren't all positive psychology books. Like The How of Happiness is a great practical positive psychology book. Sean Acors has some great but the book Mindset, I think for many people is hugely foundational, because, and I almost would recommend people read that first because it'll help you in how you approach the work and what you understand about what is actually changeable within human beings. And so Mindset, Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Travis
Yes.
Bradbury.
Yeah.
That's a very good one.
Yeah,
Good one.
which takes
Easy
the
to
work of
read.
Daniel Goleman, which is beautiful but very scientific, and Travis Bradbury distills it down into practical daily exercise and
Yep.
work you can do to increase emotional intelligence.
Especially that one in relation to, again, the fact that we are in a relationship business. I mean, it's our number one core value as our company. Relationships matter. People come first. But everything we do in our business, whether we're dealing with clients, whether we're working with our agents, whether we're dealing with our family, we're dealing with people, and that emotional intelligence stuff is
It's like the most important skill set you can work to develop and work to keep getting better at. And that's really all of what kind of Thrive and Giant is centered around. Another easy one if you want to get started, just a lot of people do podcasts, The Happiness Lab. I think they're through 3 seasons now. We've listened to all of them. They're 30 minutes every day. If you want to get one going, they're fantastic. They tackle a lot of these type issues.
I think my only recommendation for all that is find something that resonates and stick with it for a while. There's so much information now, and so many people have popularized it, and certainly, figured out how to monetize the whole gig. And it's like, and they're all really saying most of the same thing, but find the person and the strategy that really resonates with you, and ask the people around you, like, what do you think it is I might have the chance to work on. But optimism, gratitude, those are foundational, I think, for everybody.
Acts of kindness, another good one, right?
Acts
Acts of random kindness.
It's a good time of year for it.
Yeah, there you go.
For sure.
Speaking of time and money,
Oh,
is it time for another flow hack?
I think it probably is.
We've been talking hacks. It's time for a flow.
It's
hack.
time
I
for
know.
a flow hack.
Last week we may have gotten cut off a little bit. Flo, for those that don't know, is my mother. She raised me as a single mother until I was 7-ish, maybe 8 years old. So she didn't have a lot of time or money. And so all these things that I have now learned that used to be maybe annoying or kind of goofy or silly now make so much sense. And she's just wanting the same thing that we all want: time and money.
That's right.
Let's see another flow hack. Can you send Pop out to go get you a Cool Whip bowl?
No.
Well, we got to do a flow hack.
Hold on. I've got this orange sherbet bowl is the same size. Now, I can't look at all those women that are young and beautiful and doing fantastic stuff, and I can't even remember my words.
Oh, you can too.
Yes, you can.
There's never been a bigger fan of Cool Whip or a connoisseur of finer Cool Whips
Yeah.
than you.
I
Love Cool
I have cut it down some. I went cold turkey. But anyway, the main thing that I did is I saved the bowls. I just couldn't throw them away. And you could write on them. And I would take them. We would have covered dish suppers at the church. And so I would take them over there. Everybody wanted to exchange food. Oh, you've got some baked beans. I love those. Here, take some of this angel food cake, or, just whatever. And I just got to laughing one day and called it my Cool Whip ministry. And
Really a perfect size. And it's
they are.
instead
And they're free.
buying Tupperware, you're
Mhm.
reusing something that
They're
you already
free.
bought.
Because the Cool Whip itself is worth the investment.
Yeah.
The bowl,
It's just
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you do have to toss them, or today put them in your recycling. If you do, then they're free. It's not like you're taking somebody's Tupperware and they say, "Oh, you can bring it back to me the next time you come."
it's a
I
chore.
don't want to bring back Tupperware.
Me either. I don't either, because I know I'm not going to remember it.
Yeah, I'm just going to
Right.
keep it.
You know what
I'm gonna
I'll
keep
do?
mine.
I'm going to lose the top. That's what I'll do.
With a
One-
Cool Whip bowl, it doesn't matter. You can,
Cool Whip ministry bowl. That's a really good one too.
That was a great flow hack,
Just another great one. And I mean, you can really combine Flow Hack 1, which is the shower cap, with Flow Hack 2.
Yeah,
Right.
you can.
You
And
can.
eventually lose a lid.
I love
If
your
you
mom.
lose
man.
a lid. It's like
Tell
what
me,
you were saying.
tell me now. Since we got Kevin on the
think-
the screen there, tell me your what your mom used to call your friends.
That's kind of a flow hack in itself.
It kind of is.
Well, my father was a minister, and so we would move from town to town a little bit. And so there were always these new kids coming into our lives. And my mom's never been really good with names, but she gave up a long time ago, ever trying to remember anybody's names. So she just called every one of my friends Kevin.
All of them.
All of them.
Kevin.
And unless they were around, there was like the rule of 12 or 15 or something. Like if she's seen you that many times, then she has at least a 50-50 chance of remembering your name. But I asked her several years ago, I said, "Mom, we were laughing about it. Why did you just call her by Kevin?" She said, "Well, how many of those people do you still talk to?" And I said, "One." She said, "Mark?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, there you go."
Well, I didn't want to waste my brain space on learning
She
all
has
these
so
names.
many other things that
Conservation.
she has to remember. She's
Conservation
not
at its
even going to
finest.
try to remember
That's good.
my friend's
Love your
names.
mom. Love your mom.